Hi again. Remember me? I'm that spider girl that used to make videos here, and just like Edgeworth in Justice for All, I'm finally back from my little soul search that definitely didn't take too long. Funny to think how this channel is almost a year old, and I've spent over half of that time in hibernation. Well, after some thinking and a small YouTube poll, I've decided that hey, maybe these videos I make aren't that bad after all. So before playing around with some new ideas, I thought why not make a classic Deltarune theory like I used to, back in the good old days. If you wanna know what I've been doing all this time, surprisingly I haven't just been playing Left 4 Dead. Development on case files is going surprisingly well so far. With a major programming milestone passed and a few tracks already out, I think I have time for a small theory, so let's get to those. Around 2 months ago, our good friend Jaru, whose name my TDS can't pronounce for the life of me, made a video about this small audio file known as pianpian. It was discovered on one of Noel's blog posts during the Spamton sweepstakes, which I completely avoided because I don't like ARGs. The audio file itself is very weird to say the least. Listening to it, it sounds like a piano, but there's so much delay and reverb that it's impossible to make out any notes. Now Jaru believes there's something hidden here, and considering the main reason I created this channel in the first place was to correct half-bred chaos about Wolfenstein being in Bonatras, I said I'd look into it. Half a year later I'm finally gonna do that. Firstly, I wanna mention Jaru's claim about this thing being very hard to play. It really depends what you mean by play here. If you mean play the actual notes, then it should be pretty easy since it's just 2 or 3 chords played over and over again. If you mean play this piece the way it's depicted in the audio file, then it's not hard, it's outright impossible. There are so many layers of delay slapped onto this thing, there's no shot. If you want a more technical answer as to why, we first need to understand what delay actually is. Delay, or echo as it's also called, is when a note repeats itself at a lower volume. This makes a sort of reverb effect. Also, reverb and delay aren't the same thing. Reverb basically just extends a note and slaps a fade-out effect onto it. Delay actually repeats the note itself. Using this method of delay, we can accurately depict what's happening in pianpian. Let's just take a simple chord, strum it out a little and repeat it a few times. Now we'll duplicate the channel, lower the volume, and slightly offset the notes. Already you can start to hear the delay. Now we just keep doing this a bit more until it sounds like this. Slap some reverb on there and it's done. In concept, this is what pianpian consists of. There's also a bunch of stray notes sprinkled throughout the thing that cover up the chords even more. Is it possible to transcribe this? I can't tell yet. If so, it would take a professional. Anyway, it really doesn't matter what the chords are, since we are missing the real point here. Did you really think a mystery left by Tobias Radioactive Wolf was gonna be that simple? To quote the great Ace Attorney one last time, you have to think outside the box. Don't ask how to remove the delay, ask why the delay is there in the first place. This is where we get into a little something called diegetic and non-diegetic sound. I love how I get to bring up diegetic sound considering it's the literal only thing I learned in my English class. For those who don't know, There's two types of sound in film, diegetic and non-diegetic. Diegetic sound is sound which the characters can hear, while non-diegetic sound is sound that only the viewer can hear. The same applies to video games as well. The swatchling scream was heard by Susie, so it's diegetic. Meanwhile, I highly doubt Chris actually hears an anime intro song every day while driving to school, which makes it non-diegetic. It's very simple to understand, but how does it apply to pian? Well, I think the notes themselves are diegetic, but the delay effects applied to it are non-diegetic. In other words, only us, the player, can hear the delay distortion. We know that pian is an actual piano piece in the world of Deltarune. Noelle made an entire blog post about it. Speaking of which, let's go back to that for a moment. Noelle's words here are very important. We know she's heard pian before, and we know it's not the version we know. Firstly, she says Chris sometimes played it for hours. These 41 seconds of delay aren't exactly an hour long. What interests me the most is her last sentence. She describes pian as a concert just for her. Maybe those words are a lot more literal than we thought. If Chris really is playing just for Noelle, maybe she's the only one who can actually hear pian. I'm assuming the audio file on her blog is a small recording she made with her phone, and yet it still ended up distorted with delay. Well, it didn't for her, but it did for everyone else that listens to it. I can't think of any other reason why Noelle would put an audio file like this onto her post. Then there's also the fact that she privated this post, so maybe that has something to do with it. Regardless, I don't think we'll be hearing pian anytime soon, since it's not meant for us. If the soul ever takes control of Noelle, we might finally hear it, but until then, it doesn't seem likely. Now originally, I had more theories to go over, but I decided to scrap all that. Call me a clickbaiter if you want, but I have something important to talk about. I feel kinda responsible to explain that little mental breakdown I had about a month ago. To put it simply, I'm a firm believer that the constant gender war involving Chris will destroy Deltarune, if it hasn't already, so I was originally making a video going over that. After scrapping the script over 10 goddamn times, I eventually just gave up. I really wanted to make that video, but I realized something. Most of the people who watch my content probably agree with me already, so there's really no point in making it. Also, excuse my more aggressive and pessimistic tone here. When it comes to this topic, I'm just too tired to go into YouTuber mode. This is probably the most real I'll ever be, so I guess enjoy it while it lasts. I'm not gonna waste time arguing with a brick wall, so I'll instead summarize my main points and explain just why I have such a strong and I suppose childish hatred towards this part of the fanbase. Queer representation. Hell, queer in general is a very touchy subject, but like I've insinuated multiple times now, I simply do not care. Queer representation in media has gotten a lot bigger over the last few years, and it's not stopping anytime soon. Unsurprisingly, I think this is a good thing. Well, it would be if it was done right. Contrary to what you may believe from that one single instance of me calling Chris a male 11 goddamn months ago, I don't mind queer representation in media. I think it's a good thing, and I'm not angry about it being a thing. What pisses me off is that a lot of queer representation is done fucking terribly. I haven't seen many instances of queer representation in modern media myself, but almost all that I've heard about have come across as incredibly forced or rushed with no thought put behind it. The easiest example of this is the recent train wreck that was Velma. Being a woman who's attracted to other women, I can tell you that I do not like this. I don't like characters getting more attention simply for being queer, because at that point it's not even representation anymore. At that point you're just using queer characters as trophies to brag on Twitter about how progressive you are. It's honestly insulting, and I hate how much the internet has pushed the narrative that this is what actual queer people want. I understand a lot do, but a lot also don't, and the ones that don't get harassed for being homophobic. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think forcing queer characters into media just to brag about it online is a lot more homophobic than pointing it out. Not all queer representation is good, and the internet needs to realize that. Anyway, what does any of this have to do with Deltarune? Well, for the most part, this problem of awful queer representation has stayed within the film industry, but lately it's been seeping into the world of gaming more and more. Sydney Watson made an incredible video going over this, so definitely watch that to better understand my mindset. I'll link it in the description. Unsurprisingly, gaming doesn't handle it much better. Then there are games like Undertale and Deltarune that actually portray queer themes perfectly, but are ruined by their insufferable fanbase.
No, you grab it! To murder!
What makes Toby's portrayal so perfect was how he never pointed it out. Undyne and Alphys like each other, and the game understands it doesn't have to wave a fucking pride flag in the player's face every 5 seconds for them to realize that, but apparently the fanbase thinks differently. The fandom has this really weird mindset that whenever you see a gay character in a game, the expected reaction is to point and clap at them like they're a fucking zoo animal. The fanbase wants Deltarune to draw more attention to its queer themes simply for existing, and since Toby doesn't do that enough, they do it for him. They put Chris on this godly pedestal simply for being a they. Once again, this shows the mindset that queer people deserve to have the ground they walk on worshipped just to make them feel more accepted, which ultimately makes them feel more alienated than ever. This is the exact reason I never mentioned the fact that I like women, and why I've never wanted to. I didn't want to risk getting that kind of special treatment as well, because I shouldn't need constant praise to know that I'm a normal human being. This should be obvious, but what I just said should be a massive red flag. So for people to go out of their way to accuse me of not being supportive is the biggest pile of garbage I've ever seen. No wonder I snapped for a bit. Now I do want to clarify, I didn't actually get my feelings hurt by a fucking Reddit post made about me. The reason it pissed me off was because it's another reminder of just how far gone and beyond saving the Deltarune fandom is. This constant over-exaggerating, this constant assumption made from a single goddamn video, it started 5 years ago and it's only gotten worse. It hasn't died out over the years, and it just keeps going. Like I said, there's no point in arguing with a brick wall, and there's even less point in whining about it, but this really does make me sad. Undertale and Deltarune were different. Other corporate garbage I can understand taking this direction with terrible queer representation, but Toby Fox is a man who actively fought back against that. He actually tried and succeeded in portraying it accurately, and the fanbase ruined it anyway. If even Undertale now has this problem, I really have no reason to believe we'll ever have proper non-insulting queer representation in media. Well, with that out of the way, happy Easter everyone. Sorry about that small rant, I'm just so sick and tired of the fanbase being such an insufferable cesspool and being forced to stay silent about it. Does this mean I'm done with Deltarune? Of course not. I'm still working on a Fang game, and as Fiznom has proven, you don't need to actually be a fan to make a Fang game. I will be focusing away from Deltarune for a while and making stuff I actually care about. My previous attempt at that failed horribly, but unlike others, I learn from my mistakes. While I would like to see other people like Jaru and Half-Bred Chaos share their opinions on what I talked about, I'm not expecting them to, and honestly that's for the best. Like I've said, brick wall. At the very least you got a glimpse of the real me. How wonderful, that's just what I wanted. I've never technically faked my personality before, I just tend to play up my character a lot since that's what my audience seems to like. Regardless, I don't hate Deltarune, I just don't want to see it imploding on itself. Now that this video is finally done, we'll see where I go from here. I will add this. I acknowledge I wasn't exactly in the best headspace when writing this script, so in case I worded something poorly or something I said came across wrong, I'll make a follow-up video to clear up any misconceptions. Just thought I'd mention that so the inevitable response videos and Reddit posts can't claim I'm milking this for views. To end on a slightly higher note, if you know any pixel artists that want to work on a Deltarune Fang game, Case Files is still looking for more artists to help. We've already got a logo thanks to the amazing artists already helping. Thank you guys so much for helping me make this goofy game. I know I keep bringing it up, but this is by far my biggest project, and I can't wait for it to be finished. Anyway, until next time, I'm finally gonna take a nap.